In the previous lesson, we did a deep dive on the first dimension of product strategy, target audience. We discussed how deeply understanding the difference between your target audience and your total addressable market helps you identify features that better resonate with your core users. In this lesson, we'll look at how to clearly understand the problem you're solving. As with the target audience, PMs often have at least a surface-level understanding of the problem they're solving. They can state the explicit challenge they're creating a solution for and explain how their product addresses that challenge. However, they often miss an extra layer of deeper understanding on the root problem they're solving. What most PMs miss is the final outcome they are truly solving for. As a result, they end up creating incremental products or features instead of needle-moving ones. Because you have defined your problem too narrowly, you end up with a less innovative solution set that doesn't move the needle for your users. The canonical example of this is the Henry Ford quote. "If I had asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse." If Henry Ford had assumed the problem was getting a faster horse, then he would have developed only an incremental faster horse solution. However, because he understood the root problem as transportation, he was able to come up with a needle-moving solution, the car. Similarly, take the case of Disney amusement parks. Park executives thought the only way to reduce customer complaints about hour-long wait times was to add in more rides or limit the number of admitted people. In other words, they defined the problem as reducing wait times. However, when they brought in a design firm to solve the problem, the designers framed the problem completely differently. They viewed the problem as not reducing wait times, but reducing the pain of waiting. As a result, they came up with a completely different, innovative solution. They chose to add impromptu shows with Disney characters visible from waiting queues and had Disney characters parade through the queue to shake hands and take photos. These Disney character interactions were a far easier, more needle-moving solution to implement for the park, and as a result, solve the waiting problem far better. The same principles apply with software products. Take LinkedIn Sales Navigator, for example. If they had a surface-level understanding of their problem, they might be tempted to think of themselves as just a lead generation solution. Accordingly, the problem they would solve would be to create high lead volume. As a result, if they thought of themselves as purely a lead generation solution, they might over-index on developing features related to lead generation, like advanced filtering and bulk lookups. In other words, they would have played the game of generating and managing high lead quantity. This would have made LinkedIn Sales Navigator an incremental product instead of a needle-moving one. Since existing lead generation databases already have these features, often with significantly more user data, the best LinkedIn could have offered was a slightly better user interface or a slightly different data set to search into. However, the Sales Navigator team had a deeper understanding of the true issue they were solving. Salespeople were not ultimately looking for lead volume, but rather effective ways to sell. Rather than framing their problem as create high lead volume, where they would focus on creating as many cold leads as possible, LinkedIn instead framed their problem as help salespeople do successful social sales. In this arena, LinkedIn could solve the problem far better due to its ability to graph social connections and identify warm paths into a company. Although salespeople would not have as much volume to work with, their connection rate with LinkedIn's data would be much higher, resulting in more sales opportunities. Because LinkedIn recognized this crucial difference in the problem they were solving, they created a different but far more resonant solution for their target audience's deepest problems. To get a deep root cause understanding of the problem you're solving, take the outcome motivation gap approach to defining your problem. In this approach, you refine your understanding of the true problem you're solving for, thinking about the final outcome the user wants, their motivation behind wanting that outcome, and the gaps that they experience with their current solutions that prevent them from fully realizing that outcome. As we did with target audience, we've translated this process into template form to make it more actionable for you. First, write out the outcome the customer wants. By thinking about the ultimate outcome that the customer wants, instead of ideating off of their existing solutions, you escape the faster horse problem. Your outcome is the end benefit your customer wants to experience. It should not be the perceived solution to getting to that benefit. In the Henry Ford analogy's terms, the outcome would be quick transportation from point A to point B, not a faster horse. For Substack, this would be earning a living from writing. For LinkedIn Sales Navigator, their audience wants to increase the quantity, size, and speed of closed deals. Second, write out their motivation for solving the problem. You get better ideas on exactly what need you have to solve. For Substack, their audience wants to be able to keep writing because the topics they write about are personally meaningful to them. For LinkedIn, their audience earns a living on commissions, so increasing their paycheck requires them to increase their total deal dollars done. Third, write out the gaps they experience in solving the problem with current solutions. By concretely understanding why existing solutions fail, you get a better understanding of the deeper problem you must solve. For Substack, they have two issues. First, they can't make a living from doing traditional writing at media publications because the business model for traditional ad-supported media like newspapers is collapsing. Second, they often don't have full freedom to write what they want because their publication ultimately dictates what they work on and write about. For LinkedIn, they also have two challenges. First, their standard approach, cold outreach, is becoming increasingly ineffective. 97% of cold outreaches don't convert into sales meetings, and that percentage is only increasing. Second, doing the opposite, finding and conducting warm outreach, is hard. It's difficult to find the right warm contact, difficult to figure out who's the company decision maker, and difficult to understand what social context they can personalize the outreach with. Finally, armed with the understanding of why your users want an outcome and why current solutions fail, refine your framing to the problem you're solving. By factoring in your audience's desired outcome, why they want it, and what's missing from current solutions, you get a much more nuanced understanding of the problem. For example, Substack now knows their goal is not just to create a good writing platform, but rather to solve the historical problems around monetization and control faced by professional journalists. Accordingly, Substack's refined problem statement would be to enable truly independent writing. Since LinkedIn knows they're really trying to help salespeople get more closed deals via warm selling, they can refine their problem to be help sales professionals operationalize social selling best practices. To recap, developing a deep understanding of the problem you're solving requires you to think deeply about the end outcome you're solving for, and not just the immediate challenge you're tackling. To develop this understanding, we introduce the outcome motivation gap approach. In the next lesson, we'll cover how to get to a deep understanding of your value proposition.